Call to order the meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission, Monday, April 2nd. Are we going to move straight to public comments? Anyone have,
We'll take roll real quick.
take roll?
Yeah. Aaron Brown, absent. Lynn Bilodeau,
Here.
Joe Chappell,
Here.
Patrick Kerr,
Here.
Carol McPeak, absent. James Hensley,
Here.
Led Lentz, Ed Wood.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Public comments, anyone? Or I know that you can wait till we start discussing the particular item that you're here for, so we might do that. Third item is approve previous minutes from the regular meeting of February 5th, 2018, and the special meeting of February 16th, 2018. Do I have a motion?
I move we approve.
Second?
I'll second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So moved. Item number 4, discussion and possible action for a new proposed signage located at 216 East Harrison. I want to make sure that's not mine. Carol, is that the one with your name on it?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on just a second. Yeah, I think it's, did I read that wrong?
No.
It's saying
16 East Harrison's your proposal.
Okay, 116 West Harrison,
Yeah,
sorry.
they're just out of
I
order.
just read the W wrong. You can see how I got confused.
No, actually, number 4 is 216 East Harrison.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, see, look. This is the agenda you're reading up of. We just approved the minutes.
Okay, so it's not in order in the packet.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's out of order in the packet.
All right, it's out of order in the packet.
This is your proposal.
Yes, it is, so,
So you get to change hats now.
yeah, so I'm going to step down. I'm going to step down,
Do we know who's on first?
and if you have any questions, you can ask. That's this one. So it's out of order in the packet.
It's second in the packet.
Yeah. I'll just go ahead and talk a little bit about it. Basically what we did, and you know, in some of our last conversations about signage, I know that we talked about most of the old territorial signage was sort of long, thin, and we got some inspiration from some of the buildings downtown, and we provided pictures of those. We've got the Eye Doctor and Patriot Industries. And this is for the little country to town market that is in the Ellis building, sort of right across the street from Willoughby's. We recently painted the building, and we removed the sign that was up there, and we're wanting to put a sign back up for that little country to town market. So, and the colors, I don't know that we put in here, but the colors are basically going to be black and cream colored. So, any questions?
So are you planning to put the sign here?
Yes, and that actually isn't the sign. That we just put that up there to see what it might look like.
See the scale?
Yeah.
Is that 20 by 10 or 20 by 2?
No, 10.
10 by 2?
It is.
Or is it just a sheet of plywood that's cut?
It's a sheet. That's a sheet of plywood, but it's going to be 10 feet by. I want to say. You know, surely I put it in there. It's 20 inches something. 24 inches.
And you submitted this along with it? Is that the kind of style you're going to go
Yeah,
with?
yeah.
You have a border around it,
Yeah.
and you said it's going to be cream colored?
It's going to be. It'd be reversed from that. I think
So-
the.
Green background, black letters.
Yeah.
Like Patriot.
Like this.
Sort of more like
Like
the
the Patriot
Patriot one.
Industries.
The next one,
Will it have a border around it like that?
it can. It's gonna have a border, I just don't know what color the border is. You can see there,
This one like you have right here. You've got the black letters, a black border, and it's cream colored. Is that what you plan on proposing?
yeah, see, you can't, let me show you something in that picture. This whole space right here, see that? From there to there that's wood, even though it's painted the same color as the building. It goes up about that high there. I believe, so. If we were gonna paint the back of it, we would probably paint it dark like these and then have the black letters. And I know I'm not on mic.
And just for clarification, Joe, what you're talking about in the
But right
picture.
now,
yeah.
we're just talking about, I don't know that, I really, if we're gonna paint behind that sign, I'd come back and ask permission. But right now, we're just gonna paint the sign.
Okay.
So the sign's gonna look like that?
Yeah, and it's gonna go on the red surface.
Okay,
Yeah.
with a black border.
You mean around the outside
Just like
edge?
this one shows here, black border.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think that's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah. Sort of cleans it up, don't you think?
Sort of outlines it. that's for
It makes it
sure.
a little crisper, a little more finished looking. I have no problem with that.
Have you chosen your style of letters, or is it like?
Yes,
your-
it's like that.
Like
it's
this,
in-
or-
no, it's in
or
there.
Like that?
Yes.
So it looks like an aerial style.
And of course, this building is sort of a little, for lack of a better term, it's a little sort of stucco, Art Deco. It's not really,
Industrial.
it's a little more straight lined. The upstairs apartment on the building actually has circular windows. You can really see the deco influence in the apartment upstairs. So we were wanting to use a script that's a little more, I don't know, linear.
And Joe, just to be clear, what's reflected on or shown on the screen up there,
Yeah,
that cream piece is 8 foot long, because did you say that's half a sheet of plywood?
no, it's 10 feet.
Oh, that
long.
is 10 foot, so that's the actual size right there.
That's 10
Okay.
feet.
I
And look, you can
misunderstood.
tell there that I was wrong about the wood behind it. I
Right.
thought it went up higher than that.
Yeah.
But that would be the actual size of it.
I would move that we approve the sign as shown in the application with the provision that it have a black border or if it's dark brown or whatever, but the same color as the lettering in there. I would move that we approve that.
Second.
Do I need to leave the room?
I don't see why.
Leroy says you might have to. Well, the city council, when you're a member and you abstain, it acts as a no vote.
That's right. You might want, you can step
Okay.
out, just step out
So
for
we'll
a second.
follow
That
the
way it's
cylinder.
all up above board.
All right.
Okay, so I'll take the vote. Lynn Bilodeau,
Yes.
Led Lentz,
Yes.
Patrick Kerr,
Yes,
James Hensley.
Yes.
Okay, so moved.
We didn't talk about you while you were gone.
Just a
I
little.
wouldn't have blamed you.
Okay.
Item number 5, discussion and possible action for a new proposed window signage located at 116 West Harrison.
Hello, I'm Julie Hawk, and we just opened our store, Kids Galore and More. It's a kids resale store with a little bit of refinished furniture on the side, and we would like to put a sign on the window saying what we are. The picture that you have is exactly how it's going to be. We just want to move it up about 6 inches so that we can have better window display.
There's nothing there now, is
I did a little research on the signage in this book because we just got these books, or at least I did. And one of the things in the last meeting, I thought I heard that there's somewhere in the book it talks about script not being used, but I think that's more for signs than it is for windows. Because when I looked, there's some vintage pictures in this book, and there were several businesses that had script writing on the windows.
Okay.
So I think you're cool there. The other thing that the book said, which I thought was really interesting, is that if you want to see sort of what works on the building, just turn your back to it and look across the street. So before I came here tonight, I went by the building and I saw Stacy's sign, and there's what's the little building on the corner of the market? Is it Town Market? At the intersection of Oklahoma and Division, they've got, fairly good-sized script, but still enough open area to see in the window, so that's just my observation so far.
Okay.
I think the sign as presented from what appears now is in the spirit of the ordinance. I think it will work for us.
Well.
And then it'd be an addition to the district.
And it doesn't cover too much of the window, which I think is
Yeah, we
sort of
definitely
important when you
that.
look at the others, because you want to use the
Yeah,
window.
definitely. It's just an amazing space.
Yes, I feel it's a good-looking sign. It tells what you have, and it's quite plain and obvious. It's nice.
I move to approve the sign as submitted.
One second.
Do I need to leave the room?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, you don't have to.
Thank you guys so much. Never done this before.
And welcome to Guthrie.
Yeah.
We're glad you got your business. card here.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
You can do that.
Or were you going to do roll call? Is it,
I called it when you were out. I can call
Okay.
this one too.
okay,
It
then
does.
let's do
Sure.
that. Okay.
That's fine.
Patrick Kerr,
Yes.
Lynn Bilodeau,
Yes.
Led Lentz,
Yes.
Joe Chappell,
Yes.
James Hensley.
Yes.
Let me get back to my cover sheet. All right. Item number 6, discussion and possible action for proposed temporary banner signage for the State Capitol Publishing Museum building during the duration of the 89ers Day, April 17th and 21st, and other potential functions. Lynn?
Just in case anybody doesn't know, we formed a nonprofit last summer with the intention of gaining ownership of the building, restoring the building, reopening this building as a museum. And we're on our way. We've got our 501c3 approval from the IRS. Cynthia Rolfe, who just retired as Vice President of UCO, has joined our board. She's our treasurer. We opened our bank account this last week. Jan Goodyear's on our board of directors. He's our chairman of the board of directors. We already have a memorandum of understanding with the State Historical Society. They've agreed to get the building back in our hands so that we can restore it. We're gonna have to raise about $4 million to do this. So it's a huge, Patrick, the architect, says $6 million. Patrick and I spent a couple hours in the building 2 weeks ago putting together what's gonna be phase 1, which is essentially just getting all the windows either boarded or repair them as we go along. But 162 windows, it's gonna take a lot of time and a lot of money to do that. So we're starting just baby steps, wanting to get some exposure, and we want to be able to put a banner up. Kaylin Swanger, who owns, she and her husband own the boarding house business here in Guthrie. She did our graphic artwork for this, And you have a picture of what the banner was going to look like. I'm going to give you a picture of what it really is going to look like.
Oh,
Because it did change just a little bit, but very little. We decided we didn't want a phone number on there, I was gonna have to share it. But instead, wanted the website address bigger. We have our website up. It's also in baby stages, but we purchased both publishingmuseum.org and publishingmuseum.com. In case somebody types in the wrong one, they'll still end up on our website. And so we figured the best way to start getting exposure was the next big event that's going on in Guthrie, and that's 89er Days. And because it is a temporary banner, we're not just going to leave it there all the time. And I don't know how many of you guys have been by there at night in the last 2.5 weeks, but my wife and Lud and I spent an afternoon over there, and we got all the lights in the tower lit. And so it's not a dark abyss when you drive around that corner at night now. And we're simply trying to draw some attention to the building and then to our cause. So this is a banner sign that will be up, and we'll be able to just stretch it very similarly to what you see in that picture. Yeah, the one that's on the monitor. We wanted to do a 20-foot wide sign, but then people would have to walk all the way around 3 sides to read it. So 10 foot and by 4 foot is as big as we can put there. We may at a later time come back and ask for permission to do a 20-foot sign on the north facade up here, way up high. But again, only during special events so that we can draw attention to our initial fundraising efforts. But we really feel like this is a project not just for Guthrie, but it's the whole state of Oklahoma. That's one of the most important buildings in the state of Oklahoma. It was built in 1902. The first newspaper in Oklahoma was in that building. And there's equipment in that building that may not exist anyplace else in the world because so much of it was melted down during the 2 World War efforts. But there's huge printing presses, linotypes. The original smelter's still back in the back of the building down there where they would, every time they'd set up the linotype, they'd run all the lead back out, melt it down, and set new bars to do more linotype. But it's just a tremendous challenge, and we're looking forward to it, and we want to see it get done. And we didn't want to run afoul of any of the rules in Guthrie when we did it, so we made our application to this commission first. Anybody have any questions?
No. Noble cause and needs to be taken care of.
Okay.
Seeing as how we approved script for Kids Galore, I think we can okay it for the Publishing Museum.
all right. Is that a motion?
Yes, sir, take that as a...
Okay, I'll leave the room.
I move. I so move that we accept the application for a temporary matter at the Publishing Museum.
I'm glad he had to leave too. It just makes me feel better. We have a second?
Second.
Okay. James Hensley,
Yes?
Lud Lentz,
Yes.
Joe Chappell,
Yes.
Patrick Kerr.
I have to recluse myself.
Okay.
No, you have to leave the room
You have to
too.
leave the room, too.
You have to leave the
Or
room,
it'll be
or it's going to
counted
be a
as a
no
no.
vote.
I should probably recuse myself too, since I'm on the commission.
I don't, if
You won't have.
Yeah,
if
we
you
wouldn't
don't have a
quorum.
personal
We wouldn't have a
interest in
quorum,
it,
so I think
don't
3
really-
to 1 will work
you
anyway.
don't really have a personal interest in it.
There's not really a personal gain.
No personal gain involved.
Are we okay if they stay?
Yeah, as long as they're comfortable, they don't have any personal gain from the effort of the nonprofit.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
There's no gain here.
Yeah, I know you guys are looking to get rich off this.
Yeah.
Patrick, do you want to vote?
I vote in favor if I'm allowed to
Yeah.
vote.
Okay.
Is that it? Okay, we've carried. Okay, discussion, item number 7 is discussion and possible action to approve submission of comments to the Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office on the modified conceptual design for the ODOT, Oklahoma Department of Transportation TAP, which is a Transportation Alternative project. This is to fund the downtown streetscape project with curb extensions limited to Division Street. And I have two people signed up for public comment.
And I think our city manager was going to make a brief presentation.
Okay.
Maybe we could hold comments until after.
Do you want to go first, sir? Okay.
I want to provide some background. First, I would point out that you should have at your desk 3 11 by 17 sheets.
Yes.
When this project was originally designed, there were bump outs that went north and south across Oklahoma and Harrison at Division, as well as bump outs that go east-west on Division at those two intersections. It's been modified now, and the concept is to not have any bump outs across to Oklahoma or Harrison to protect the historic viewshed. The bump outs or curb extensions, whichever term you want to use, are limited to those running east and west across Division. So if you look, I've highlighted them yellow and circled. So the big discussion of the plan comes to those curb extensions that are as wide as a parallel parking spot.
Okay.
That's potentially supposed to go around our whole downtown. And if you look at those drawings, it tells you where there's going to be brick pavers, where there's going to be asphalt, where there's going to be concrete. This TAP Downtown Streetscape project was an ongoing project for multiple years before I became Guthrie City Manager. Therefore, there's a lot of project history that I was not involved in. And based on my understanding of this project, there may have been better ways to handle it. And we could probably stay here all night and talk about should have, could have, but that's not going to get us anywhere. I will tell you that during my tenure, when we did the containers for dog litter, we brought those to the Historic Planning Commission to make sure that we fit in with the design elements of downtown. So I think that gives you some impression of the value I see with the Historic Planning Commission and the way we'll do things going forward, but I can't go back in the past and change the past. Given the history of the variations of opinions on the project, staff tried to do some basic research on the curb extensions or bump outs, depending on which terminology you want, within the historic district. Staff could not find any streetscape guidance for downtown historic districts adopted for the state of Oklahoma. SHPO has not adopted any. So I looked at the Urban Street Design Guide, National Associations of City Transportation Officials, and just excerpting some of their literature. Curb extensions visually and physically narrow the roadway, creating safer and shorter crossings for pedestrians. Curb extensions increase the overall visibility of pedestrians by aligning them with the parking lane and reducing the crossing distance for the pedestrians. So the curb doesn't start here and you got cars parked here and people driving down the street can't see you because you're covered by a vehicle. The curb extension brings you out to the end of that parking spot so the vehicles can see you when you're standing there waiting across the street. So it gives you visibility. The Michigan State Historic Preservation Office Streetscape Guidance for Downtown Historic Districts, corner extensions, Expansion of the sidewalk into the parking lane at street corners, also known as bump outs or aprons, are sometimes necessary for the control of vehicle traffic and parking or for the provision of pedestrian safety. When corner extensions are planned, either minimize their size as much as possible and use materials that are compatible in color and texture with the historic sidewalk, or allow these spaces to be the foci for introducing new elements such as light poles, planters, trees, and benches. Now, I looked at the Texas Historic Commission, their streetscape guidelines for historical commercial districts. Bump outs have only been in use for the past several decades. Although bump outs have no historic basis, they do improve pedestrian safety. If not carefully planned, these new elements can dramatically change the character of a historic district. They may be acceptable if their overall treatment is simple. Further, city staff would respectfully suggest that the historic downtown Guthrie is not a museum to be maintained in its original 1890 to 1910 pristine appearance. There have been many alterations and modifications throughout the years. Minimal modifications to enhance pedestrian safety and to be compliant with the American Disability Act are worthy of favorable consideration. Based on this basic information and discussion of various parties of interest, staff modified the conceptual design for the downtown streetscape project along Division Street in an effort to minimize the curb extensions and to maintain the historic view shed looking east and west on Oklahoma and Harrison Avenues. The modifications to the concept design, the curb extensions going north and south on both Harrison and Oklahoma Avenues at the intersection with Division were removed to minimize the curb extensions and to maintain the historic view shed looking east and west on Oklahoma and Harrison. So if you stand on Oklahoma and Harrison and look east and west, you won't even see the curb extensions or the bump outs. The curb extensions going east and west on Division at the intersection of both Harrison and Oklahoma were retained to enhance pedestrian safety when crossing Division, a state highway, by increasing the overall visibility of pedestrians, by aligning them with the parking lane, and reducing the crossing distance for pedestrians. I didn't get a chance to look records up today, but it's my understanding there have been pedestrians hit crossing Division in the past.
And killed.
These curb extensions also better connect the east and west sides of downtown Guthrie. It should be noted these curb extensions are limited to the width of a parallel parking space. The other thing that we added to the project was permissive left turn signals. The green arrow that changes to the flashing yellow arrow at both Oklahoma and Harrison intersections with Division were added to the project to enhance traffic flow in these intersections. So we're going to add turn signals as part of this project at both of those intersections. When you'll have a hard green turn arrow, and then when that ends, it'll go to a flashing arrow, so if nobody's coming, you can still make the turn. Once the modified conceptual design for the streetscape project is submitted to ODOT, there will be an environmental review process that will include a review and comments from both the National Park Service and the Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO. This is a standard process for all projects that involve federal funding. Comments from the environmental process may lead to further refinement or modification of the project. Because things were kind of done out of order the 2 years before I got here, we tried to figure how do we move this project forward. So in January, city staff met with select representatives from the Historic Preservation Commission, Logan County Historic Society, and other interested parties. This small sampling agreed that to move the project forward, the city should submit the modified conceptual design for the downtown streetscape project to ODOT so that the environmental process could be initiated. The group felt comfortable that the future modifications that might be required as a result of the review and comments from the National Park Service and SHPO would adequately protect the architectural and historical elements of the Guthrie Historic District. It was also agreed that the modified plan be submitted to the Historic Preservation Commission, not for approval, but to provide the commission the opportunity for submission of collective comments, if any adopted by the full commission, to Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office. And that's what we're here tonight, is to present this to the Historic Preservation Commission. So if you all have comments, pro or con, you can adopt those and submit them to SHPO. Part of the reason why we agreed to this concept, some of the qualifying factors that influenced that decision is, one, ODOT would not accept any initial design concept that did not include some form of curb extensions. ODOT understood our desire to protect the historic viewshed of Oklahoma and Harrison Avenues looking east and west, and therefore was receptive to the modified concept plan. So we have to at least have some bump outs in the project when we submit it to ODOT, or we have to turn the money down. $678,000. So that's the first hurdle we have to overcome, is submitting some document to ODOT that has bump outs or curb extensions. ODOT further indicated if the modified design concept were submitted and due to comments from the Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service as part of the environmental review process led to the removal of the curb extension, the city would be able to retain the grant funds for a downtown streetscape without curb extensions. So it's kind of a two-step process. One, you submit it, then if it goes to SHPO and the national parks, if they are adverse to the curb extensions and say that they're not acceptable and ODOT agrees with that, then we can still retain the money and redesign the project accordingly.
Are you saying that would be their decision, though?
Yes. Based on the preceding information, the City Council on February 6th approved the submission of the modified conceptual design for the downtown streetscape project funded through an ODOT TAP grant to the Oklahoma Department of Transportation so that the environmental process could be initiated. We have not submitted the plans yet to ODOT because we wanted to give the Historic Preservation an opportunity to decide what comments they might want to submit to SHPO so that our application didn't hit them before your comments. They would be timed together. So after tonight, we'll make a decision on when we actually turn the application or the design in. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
First of all, just a couple, the planting area on the corners, what we were thinking about putting in the planting area?
We are looking at items that would be low maintenance and not intrusive. When we talked about that with the group that I met with from representatives, we decided to not get into those details at this time, but go ahead and get it submitted because the big things were the curb extensions. And then if we had come back, then we can work those details out, but things that are low in maintenance. And they will have irrigation to them.
I was thinking more like height.
Me too.
Limited in height. We don't want
Limited
anything
to what
taller.
height?
Pardon?
Limited to what height?
I don't have,
18 inches,
I don't have that
3
sheet
feet?
with me.
Or are you just talking about ground cover?
Ground cover predominantly.
Not trees or,
Or
There
bushes
are,
or
I
something
think,
like
5
that,
trees.
or something like that.
I think there are 5 trees proposed.
In the entire area, all on Division.
Yes.
And I don't know,
Are they in the bump out thing?
In the planting area?
If you look at the drawing,
You're on the sidewalk.
you can see, the tree grates from, Harrison
Just these
south
little
on
square-
Division.
okay.
You see three of them?
Yep. I see,
I see.
there are 5, all south of Harrison. 3 on the, west side
see.
and 2 on the east side. Are they?
And then I think there are 4 more showing north of Oklahoma.
Right.
Okay, and then 4 north of Oklahoma, so 10 altogether.
9.
9.
4 and 5, you're right. No, I was told there'd be no math. Do you know, has anybody counted to see how many parking places, parallel parking places are gonna be eliminated?
I've not counted those recently. Some of the parking spaces will be eliminated because of the ramping for ADA requirements at the end of curbs. But as far as that goes, we can modify the plan to leave other bump outs. When I met with the group and talked about submitting it, they wanted to submit the plans as were and then modify them later.
Wow.
It appears that you'll be eliminating about 24 parking places.
I don't think that's correct.
Well, you got dimensions on these things, and all these planters here, where you got 41 feet, that's probably 2 parking places. And at all these corners, parking spaces approximately 20 to 22 feet long.
Again, the primary concern by the group that I met with was the curb extensions. We didn't get into parking spaces and shrubbery. They wanted to address that later. Yes.
Of all the money in the grant we're talking about, all of that goes towards the items specified on these 2 sheets, right?
This one's 36 feet.
Other than, I don't think the alley is a potential, and I don't think it's on these 2 sheets.
But there's,
That's one space.
included in that is nothing down on, say, the parking lot across the street south from the Victor Building, say, or some of these other areas. What we're talking about is strictly these areas on Division,
That one's definitely.
crossing Harrison and Oklahoma.
That's what the original application was for, Division Street.
1 to 2.
Do you know what the total cost of the project might be?
The total cost, the grant is, right now, it looks like we'll be using $626,000 of the grant, and we will have local funding of $377,000. I'm rounding this off. So the total project will be right at $1,004,000.
Where does the
Where
local
does the
funding come
377
from?
come from?
The 377 will come from sales tax earned from the Mumford concert is where the predominant amount will come from. The street lights that we added to turn signals will come from our capital improvement fund.
And on the 3 diagram sheets that we have, where it shows the crosswalk, is that the current location of the crosswalks? Are they being moved?
I believe it's at the current location.
And are we ADA compliant at those locations right now?
Some of them we are not.
I need to jump into this with both feet. I feel that to put the bump outs in these planting areas, that might look fine in some, or work fine in some communities, maybe most communities. But I see a lot of this as unnecessary for several reasons. Number one, it didn't exist historically. And we really cannot create an environment where the downtown built environment is like it was, say, 1910 or 1900. but certain things that are included in this, the bump outs, it will impede, not only will it eliminate some of the parallel parking, but it will impede making right-hand turns on some of these stops and so on. And anybody that spends time downtown, you see a lot of the delivery vehicles. I mean, that's a critical thing that they do. So my point is that I think it's a detriment where it is here. In these two intersections, I see this as a detriment to the historic district. It never existed originally. And it's one of the things that we pride ourselves on in Guthrie and have since we passed the ordinance and.
Stoplights probably didn't occur originally either.
Sure did.
Well, right, they didn't.
And
You know,
I
I did a-
respect your opinion, and I know that I am making a presentation to a group that may have a different opinion than I do, and I respect that, but I just wanted to give you the history.
I'm not
As
arguing.
I know
I'm
that,
just saying, in
and-
my opinion, the
Yes.
ordinance does not support this.
Yes. I can tell you that if it has to do with the green spaces and parking, that can be adjusted. The big hurdle appeared to be getting over, could any curb extensions be accepted or not? And that's the hurdle we're trying to get over. The rest of it can be played with and adjusted to have fewer green places, to have more parking. We understand parking is a critical factor there.
Well, when you say some bump outs are required by ODOT.
Yes.
How many are required, do we know?
They agreed to the plan, the revised plan, that was acceptable to them to just put them across division.
Well,
And got rid of 8 of them.
Correct.
I mean,
I've got a different view of this, and I'd like to give a little bit of it. I looked, I did a bit of research on bump outs in historical districts and streetscape. In fact, the Texas thing that you read earlier, I had read. And I've been to, you go to a lot of historical communities anymore, and they've got bump outs. In fact, I have this paper here, and I was going to read this. This is Streetscape Guidance for Downtown Historic Districts. Successful project design solution to preserve the historic character of the individual community, preserving significant elements and introducing new features that are compatible with the historic character of the community, including bump outs, roundabouts, it talks about here. And it does talk about how you can make these less intrusive. And of course, all the material I read talks about how, and the reason they're giving us this money, let's face it, is because it makes it safer for people to cross the street. I do remember a woman being killed at the intersection of Oklahoma and Division. I also, my niece, Mallory, when this first came up, she does a lot of walking and pushing her babies around, and she doesn't want to cross Division because she has to get out in the street when she's pushing the carriage to see if cars are coming up the street. The other thing that I like about this new design, because this is the first I've heard of it. You know, coming in on South Division and into downtown Guthrie, it's no bit of beauty when you pull in there. There's, you know, a parking lot that is attractive where buildings used to be, and the old gas station, which is the donut shop. And to me, this could provide a really spectacular entrance, a better entrance into downtown, a softer, more aesthetic entrance into downtown. And if nothing else, there are historic communities all over that have used bump outs and used them effectively. And one of the things they talk about is keeping the landscaping low, you know, on the corners, nothing high, no big curbs, normal curb size. Anyway, I think it would be a good thing for Guthrie. So.
And again, I hope you appreciate I'm in an awkward situation. I'm trying to move a project forward that was not my initial project. I'd rather move projects forward that we had 100% agreement in I don't think we have too many of those in Guthrie, but that's what I strive for. I respect your gentleman's opinion, and whatever comments you decide to submit to SHPO, I think are
Well-
your decision.
The purpose of the historic district ordinance that we have in this town since 78 was to preserve and protect the built environment. And there are some cases where you have to maybe allow things that were not part of the historic fabric, like stoplights. But there are other things that have been proposed over the years that seem to be, maybe if it's not broke, don't fix it. Maybe we don't need to do this. Is it too complex? Is it too much busyness on the streetscape? So the real purpose of the ordinance is to protect the district from this. And so I think these things in these locations, if someone wanted to put trees or bump outs wherever down the street, I mean, that's fine. But
Excuse me.
I don't think that the spirit of the ordinance justifies these kinds of changes in the streetscape in that area. I don't think it's there. I don't think it's necessary. I think it'll be a detriment. Now, it'll look cutesy. It'll look like downtown Edmond, maybe, or downtown whatever. Pick any town USA. But that's not Guthrie. So I think we have to be very careful about that.
Hopefully, though, you are supportive of us maintaining the grant, and if we get SHPO comments that require us to remove the curb extensions, and ODOT will still let us keep the money and redesign
I mean,
it
it still has
without.
to go to the State Historical
Correct.
Preservation, so they would have to.
Hopefully, that concept you can buy into.
Oh, we can buy into keeping the grant money, but we're kind of getting to the point, we're gonna let ODOT blackmail us and say, this is what's best for your community. It's, maybe this is states' rights, I don't know. But it's like, are we gonna let ODOT, because they have money to spend, and they dangle it in front of us, say, this is what's good for you? I think it's our decision as the HP.
Well, it is,
Commission.
it's our decision, but too, I was at the beginning of this process. They had, I would guess that we had 50 people at the first meeting on how to spend that money from, and there were all kinds of ideas. There was going to be an amphitheater across the street from the Victor Mall in that parking lot, and you were talking about losing a lot of parking spaces. And that was where the farmer's market was going to be. I can't even remember all the ideas, but we met for, I don't know, 6 months? Do you remember, Justin? We met for 6 months, and there were a lot of compromises. So, I mean, it's not like ODOT is forcing us to do this. This was our idea. It wasn't theirs. It was a big group of people in the community. I was involved in it. I know Justin was. I can't even remember all the people that were there. Now, we started off with 50, and it dwindled to about 20, but the community was involved in the decision. And part of the major reason, once again, came back to safety. And if you look time and time again, this is going to make crossing divisions safer and more pedestrian friendly. There's also a big movement across the United States, which Guthrie will be involved in whether it wants to be or not, but historic preservation combined with urban design. And all really sort of booming historical communities use common sense approaches to making a city more pedestrian friendly, bicycle friendly. This is all part of moving Guthrie, keeping its historical integrity, but moving it into, a modern, happening, millennial-friendly city. So, that's my
Again, I
2
hope
cents.
I submitted my comments respectfully, and I've
thank you.
shown the due respect for your
And
opinion.
good people can agree to disagree, can't they?
And Leroy, thank you. Yes,
I just
if
want
I
to
could-
say, I'm right almost in the middle between Mr. Lentz and Mr. Chappell. If this diagram represents the current placement of the walks, I don't have a problem with the curb extensions on the corner of Division and Harrison, on the corner of Division and Oklahoma. Patrick came up with 24 parking places missing. I came up with 18. It's like I told him, I was told there'd be no math at this meeting, but we're eliminating a lot of parking places if this goes exactly as it is here.
And again, what we're trying to do is get the curb extension issue settled. As far as the green spaces, we can come back and visit and remodify those.
One more,
And-
how long would it take the project to do?
I did not look at the construction time period, so I don't have that answer with me tonight.
Yeah, I don't have a problem. The bottom line for me is I don't have a problem with what you've highlighted in green. I have a problem with all of the curb extensions between Harrison and Oklahoma on Division. It eliminates a lot of parallel parking along.
There aren't any.
What's that?
Well,
Those are all planning areas.
there's green spaces.
Planning areas.
Oh,
All of these.
oh,
This
see,
is
I
the
didn't-
block
I didn't-
betwon
I didn't
Harrison
see
and
those.
Division.
I
Yeah,
didn't see those. Hold on just
And
a
those
second.
can be adjusted.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I-
the way, okay,
I
excuse
don't
me.
even mind the trees in the sidewalk, you know.
Understand.
Small, well-behaved trees with the tree grates. But yeah, I have a problem with all of the others.
When,
But
when,
it's
when
the
I
block
met
in
with the
between.
group that was representative of the historic
Sure.
side, and I asked them if they wanted to talk about the parking and stuff, and the conclusion was, no, let's get it submitted so that we can make get a decision made on the curb extensions. The rest of it, we could adjust once we got past that hurdle.
Well, I just
And
think all
that's-
the retail places downtown appreciate as much parking as we can leave them.
And I agree with that, and that's what we did in council, was to go ahead and push this forward, and I was a part of that meeting where we came up with this idea where Plan B, where the curb extensions were only going to be on Division itself and not
I
on
think that
Oklahoma
was
and
a great-
Harrison.
I think that
That
was
is-
a great compromise on your guys' part.
And I still personally am not a fan and really don't want to see curb extensions. I'm for the rest of the project. I think lighting, street lighting, the upgrade of walkways, alleyways, the rest of the downtown is fine with pavers and things. The curb extensions, because of the sight lines and because of that's what people come to Guthrie for. We don't want to be like another little town in Texas or Oklahoma or Edmond or anything. And this again, as Ludd was saying, this is the historic nature of the town. We are on the National Historic Trust, and we don't want to lose that because we start tinkering with the way our community looks. Well, let me finish, Joe. The thing is that we need to the only way we can get this done is we've agreed that we would submit this plan as it is with the curb extensions. Now, SHPO, the National Park Service, wants that, because it is federal money, they will all have to go through that. They may say absolutely no curb extension, because we are a National Historic Land Site, and that changes the sight line of that. They may say no. Then that frees the money up for fixing the other things that I said that we're all in favor for. So,
Again, I appreciate y'all's time.
And we appreciate you. We
Yes,
appreciate
thank you,
you
Leroy.
coming
Thank
here
you.
and the way you presented it.
Thank you, Leroy.
Really do.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about safety. I cross that street probably once a day usually, and it doesn't make any difference where you are. You can already be halfway across the street. If somebody decides to turn right, they're going to turn right. Doesn't matter where you are when you start off. I don't see how it's really going to help the safety that much. And if you push the little button, the little hand comes up, you got plenty of time to cross the street, and it's still going to be, it's a state highway. It's not some little bucolic downtown main street. It's a state highway, and there's big trucks, oil field moving equipment up and down that street all day. And I watch people in front of Shorts, the school bus, turn right, and they go up on the curb as it is. I don't really see it.
and personally, I see people now, right now, they're on the corner, at the corner. If we push the street or the sidewalk out into the street, they're going to be halfway out in the street now where
I
people
don't
are going. That's
understand
just
that
the way I see it.
Okay, where do we go from here? What,
Two people
I got
signed
one
in.
one more notion that, we mentioned earlier about a new system of lights. You can cross here, you can't cross here, and there's audible. Do we really need a computer to tell us, other than a stoplight, a go light, whatever, do we really need a computer with a screen at the street there to tell us it's okay to cross the street? I mean, is this making it unnecessarily complex? Maybe.
I'd have to do some research on that.
I have no idea.
I have no idea.
And then one more thing, I see people all the time walking up in our streets, and they stop, and they take pictures of photos of our buildings. Why don't we put a tree in front of it? I don't understand that either.
Exactly.
Well, that's just
I think that can be discussed later, as Leroy was saying. This really is, we're just trying to get this pushed through so we can, this is comments. We all gave our pros and cons for this. I think that we need to let this thing, the chair needs to let this go on. So really if everybody has their,
So we don't need a motion on this, do we?
Yeah, but we have some more public statements.
well, yes, there's an action that this needs to go on and be submitted, I believe.
How about you, sir, in the back there?
Thank you all. For the record, I'm Barrett Williamson. I'm an architect, practice a lot of historic preservation projects. I've written these grants. I've executed these grants through historic districts. I'm also on the board of advisors to the National Trust. I was invited to come up here in January. Leroy, I think he did a really good job succinctly laying out what the issues are. I would add a couple of caveats to that. One, having been on the grant writing side and winning a grant like this, normally is just a really great thing. They are competitively judged. I think one of the gists that has not come out of this is if ODOT had to go back and rescore this based on the modifications that are being discussed here, getting rid of the landscaping, getting rid of the bump outs, you don't get the grant. That's why the money would go back. So their proposal to get it to SHPO and the National Park Service allows SHPO to be the bad guy and say no, and I don't know what they're going to say, but they can say, no, you can't do that, redesign it. And ODOT, that money is not in jeopardy to Guthrie, okay? The second point I'd like to make is there's 22 national landmark districts in the state of Oklahoma. This is the biggest, most dense one in the state.
The first one.
It is not a historic district. It is a landmark district. So I think the question is, and I don't have a dog in this fight, I think the question is, from your standpoints, is do you want to move the project forward and put your trust in the National Park Service and the SHPO's office to guard you and maybe to give you some options if these things were not approved? Then you have maybe several $100,000. You can say, well, let's put some brick sidewalks on Division, or do something else that might be more in some of your opinions is keeping in a more historically correct treatment of the area. So, I mean, so the bottom line on this is, if this was going through a historic district, it would go. I mean, it would go, SHPO would allow it. This being a national landmark district, that is a much higher standard. So I am not going to speak for the SHPO or the National Park Service, but I do think that for the project to go forward, it will go forward through the SHPO's office and the National Park Service, or it'll die and the money will go away. And I'm not sure that anybody wants to see that happen, but anyway, be happy to answer any questions.
Well, maybe tonight then we need a motion.
But, oh, and on the stoplight thing, that's Americans with Disabilities Act.
I understand. Thank you.
Yes.
So maybe tonight to move this forward, to see if we could save our money, but yet accomplish what we want to vis-a-vis our ordinance. Maybe you need a motion, we need a motion that would say, and I'm taking this right off the information we have here, saying that we approve the submission of our comments that we've all thrown out tonight, but retain the ability or the right to have further comments down the road, whether it is or is not passed by SHPO, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, we have some conflicting opinions on this, so I think if we had a motion where that was accepted, and we'll submit these comments and let them run with it. But we still maintain that we want some input on these revisions that we talked about. And we could do that in a motion.
Like on any future revisions.
Right, because we
And I'm really, this is not the place for me to be in this conversation.
Well, I believe that that's part of when the new plans, whatever comes back down, it'll still come back before historic preservation to see the new plans or the final plans before. This is just approved submission of comments, the way I read this, our possible action on this tonight. Everybody's put in their 2 cents. We hear from, thank you very much for being here and giving your opinion and telling us exactly what's going on, and we all heard what's going on, and that's what, yes, Barrett. And that way, this will all go to SHPO and probably the national parks, and they'll see what we all feel here tonight.
Is everybody here pretty confident or comfortable with what we've kicked out and to send this on down the road with Leroy?
Under the understanding that this is totally conceptual, that's why we're gonna move it on, was subject to revisions later on.
Yes. Is everybody comfortable with a motion to that order?
Leroy, do we have that power?
Yeah, we did.
I think you do. I think that you could make a motion to submit comments to SHPO and the National Park Service, expressing some of your concerns on the project and that you want them to review, and whether you send a unanimous or multiple opinions, that would be up to you. When the city gets the feedback from SHPO and ODOT and it'll also go to Archaeological Society and several other entities as well. Any revisions that we have to make as a result of those comments, we will want to have your all's involvement as we make those revisions.
And I'm fine with that. I just don't want to be the tail wagging the dog.
I understand.
So can I move that we approve the process conceptually, subject to any redesign or revisions that we may see necessary in the future?
As a result of the environmental review, the SHPO
Exactly.
and
Yes.
national parks.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
A second.
Justin, did you need to say anything, or has everything been said that you were going to talk about?
Sure, go ahead. He's signed up, isn't he?
Yes, he
Yeah.
signed up.
I'll even time myself so I'm not.
You have 5 minutes.
I think I timed myself at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Go. All right. And I wrote it down so I wouldn't prattle on. One of the main reasons that my family and I moved to Guthrie 13 years ago was the beautiful historic downtown. Not only do we love this place, but we really appreciate all that you guys do to make Guthrie a really special community. A few years ago, I was asked to volunteer as the chairperson for the committee that made the downtown improvement recommendations that we're talking about. We recommended that to the city council. The recommendation we made was for the street and sidewalk improvements, including the bump outs or curb extensions, whatever you want to call them, to the Division Street in downtown. This was recommended because the committee felt it did the most good for the most people. It's based on the conversations tonight and some other folks that have talked with me. I've heard about the concerns about how this project might affect historic preservation. It's my opinion that one of the greatest supports for historic preservation is to make a place safer and easier and more convenient for people of all ages to walk through our amazing downtown. Accessibility by foot and people with special needs, it's a key to people falling in love with a place. The improvements we recommended to the city, including the curb extensions and landscaping and better sidewalk or crosswalks, et cetera, they're an indispensable way to make our downtown an even better place for people who want to work and play and shop and live in a great downtown community. My family and I, we've walked from our home at Ash and Manser to downtown more times than I can count. But twice in just the last month at the intersection of Oklahoma and Division, I've had to grab my 12-year-old son and yank him back so a car doesn't run him over. Each time, that car probably would have killed him. So not only would the streetscape, in my opinion, enhance our beautiful historic downtown, it would help ensure that future generations get a chance to fall in love with this place, like I have, like my wife has, like my family has. Thank you guys for your time and all you do for our community. In my opinion, historic preservation, like you have to be able to live in a place. Historic preservation is not about creating somewhere where you can just drive through it and admire it from a distance. You have to be able to make it possible for young families. I've got a 12-year-old son. I also have an elderly mother. And if an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old or an 80-year-old can't cross, the main intersections in our downtown, then we haven't designed our city for people to live here. So this project excites me because I think it gives us a chance not only to ensure that people fall in love with this town more and our historic buildings, but it also makes it safer for us to have young families here, for us to have elderly people who feel safe to cross the streets. So again, appreciate your all's time, and 4 minutes.
Thank you, Joseph.
Okay, back to the motion.
So if our motion passes, is one or are some of us going to put together comments to send to SHPO?
Or do we
Basically,
just-
I've got notes, and then I'll watch the tape back, compile them, who said what, send it out for you guys to say, yes, that's what I meant, or that's what I said, and then those would be submitted.
Will SHPO, if we send them a verbatim transcript of this, are they likely to read the whole thing? Probably not. Should we send them some kind of synopsis to where the gist of the conversation went this way, then it went that way, then it went back this way? In other words, we had a mixed reaction to it?
So maybe just a summarization of each commissioners, and then comments with also the public comments, and just abbreviate that down so it is something that's easily digestible and that they can look at understand where everyone was.
City staff will try to do a fair representation of the opinions of the group.
Okay.
City
I'm good
staff
with that.
always
Yeah.
do a
Yeah.
good job.
Thank you.
You guys are great.
So we're all clear on what our and we already have a motion and a second, right?
Yes.
We ready to vote?
Should we restate the motion?
I don't think we need to.
I have approves process conceptually with revisions, the ability to make revisions in the future.
Subject to response from SHPO.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Subject to. And then I had a first from Kerr and a second from Lentz. Okay. I'll take the vote. Patrick Kerr,
Yes.
Led Lentz,
Yes.
James Hensley,
Yes.
Lynn Bilodeau,
Yes.
Joe Chappell.
Yeah. Any additional staff comments?
Actually, I have on here the new chair for 2018 and vice chair was never elected. We were filling some positions on the board and so on. So if we could do that now at this time, if there's any nominations for a chair and vice chair, then we would have those to fill the duration of 2018 and then re-elect those in January of 2019.
Do I have any motions? Or nominations, I guess would be.
Well, you've done a fine job tonight, Joe. I nominate Joe Chappell for chairman.
Joe, do you want to be chair?
Amen, brother.
I can be.
I'll second the
I'll just
nomination.
argue with you guys.
I only want him if he wants to be chair. You want to be the chair?
Yeah, I'll be chair.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Maybe I'll get better.
And who was the first? Was that you, Patrick?
No, it was
Oh, James.
James.
Okay, I'm sorry. Second from Lynn. Okay.
So when you send those comments in, when you put the chairman said,
You weren't the chairman.
No.
Y- you weren't
Chairman-elect.
nominated yet.
Chairman-elect.
It's already going to his head.
Okay, I'll take a vote on that.
Okay.
James Hensley,
What? Oh, I'm sorry. You're voting. I drifted away.
yeah, he nominated me,
Yes.
now he's not gonna vote for me.
Lynn Bilodeau,
Yes.
Patrick Kerr.
I'm not sure.
I'll take that as a yes.
He said yes.
Led Lentz.
Yes.
Okay. And vice chair.
I'll nominate Mr. Hensley.
No, I think you best,
I second that.
no.
Don't nominate somebody that doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, who wants the job?
Make Lynn.
Lynn wants the job, do you not?
Lynn's got too many jobs.
Speak up, Lud.
I think Lynn looks pretty good.
Me too.
I would do it so if Joe's not here, I'll
I'll
chair.
second.
Okay.
Joe, you'll be good.
You
do
know
a
I
great
try
job.
to be here.
Lynn will do a good job. We're in good hands.
I second it.
Okay. Led Lentz,
Yes.
Patrick Kerr,
Yes.
Lynn Bilodeau.
Sure.
Sorry, James Hensley.
Definitely,
That was an affirmative.
yes.
Did you say my name?
Oh, and Joe Chappell.
I didn't have my hearing aids on tonight. Yes.
Okay.
All right, any additional comments from staff?
Just a reminder, we have a commissioners camp that's available through the annual Historic Preservation Conference, which is going to be in Tulsa, June 6th through 8th, and then the camp specifically will be on June 7th. So if you can look at your calendars and if that's something you're able to do, then we can coordinate the details.
I went to that last year, and it's very impressive. Talks a lot about placemaking, which I think this project would be. But anyway.
Sherry and I are planning on going this year.
Good. That's all I
All
have.
righty. Any commissioner comment? Everybody's worn out?
I want to thank our city staff
Yes.
for once again being here for us, to help us, shepherd us down the process. You guys are appreciated more than you know.
Agreed. I second that.
Yes, I want to say thank you, Leroy, for presenting that, making it clear.
Very much.
Thank you, Rebecca, for maintaining it.
Leroy and Rebecca.
Yes.
All right. If there's no further comments, I adjourn the meeting.
Okay.